Welcome to the Tough Talk Podcast, your weekly sports podcast rambling and debating all your favorite sports. Previews, recaps, predictions, and more. Only here at Tough Talk. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at Tough Talk Pod. Now, here are your hosts, Christian and Derek.
Hey Christian, how's it going today?
Hey, how you doing, Derek? And how you doing, everybody? And welcome to Tough Talk Podcast, a proud affiliate of the Blue Collar Media Group now. We're glad to be a part of them. And it's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day to you. We got a great slate for you today. I'll tell you what, I am really excited for this episode. We have some great things to talk about. A lot of sports are back. Baseball's back in the air, and I know Derek, and I know me. We're pretty excited about that one. We can talk about some UFC as well. We're going to talk about some football, but not the NFL, the XFL. Pretty exciting there. And we'll talk about NBA, and we'll get a little NFL in there too. But yeah, really excited to get going with this slate. It's going to be a good time here on this Friday night.
Yeah, before we jump into everything real quick, though, I want to go ahead and make an announcement on here first. Manchester U has got into some trouble, and it looks like they're not going to be able to compete for a cup for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I did see that, which is pretty.
I just wanted to throw that out there for any soccer fans, anybody who watches soccer around here. That's something I just thought was kind of crazy, and that just actually happened this morning. So I thought that was kind of something we could go ahead and just throw in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Man City being out with a ban there, it looks like they definitely, they ruined some things going on. They're not going to be able to participate in the Champions League for 2021, 2022, 2-year ban. Obviously, it looks like they'll still be able to play in the Premier League, but Champions League, it's not going to happen. Man City is going to appeal this ban. We'll see if maybe it gets demoted to maybe a 1 year, or maybe something will change. It'll be different. But as of right now, it stands 2-year ban for Man City. Pretty big for that Premier League team. They're a pretty big team around there, so them not being able to participate in the Champions League is going to hurt them revenue wise. Not a good look.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger soccer organizations, so it's kind of crazy news to find coming out. But let's go ahead and get into the first topic here. And the first topic we're talking about is the Mookie Betts trade. Mookie Betts, David Price got moved to the Dodgers for Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong. And this is a clear salary dump by Boston because they're not trying to go over the threshold again, and they don't want to pay the fine again this year. That's the same reason that teams like the Cardinals have been making small moves, is because they don't want to go over the threshold and get the penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Boston had the penalty 2 years in a row, so this would have been a third year in a row, which would have made it even a bigger penalty, a stiffer penalty, and they weren't competing, so it was kind of time to move on from the two big contracts anyway. What do you think about how everything went down?
Well, as a Red Sox hater, I'm glad that Mookie Betts is no longer on the Red Sox. As a Los Angeles Dodgers hater, because those are my two least favorite teams in the MLB, hey, sorry, I'm not happy that Mookie Betts is on the Dodgers. However, this trade, I could see it coming. I was actually hoping that he'd go to San Diego. I thought seeing Mookie and Manny Machado together would be pretty fun. But, hey, Mookie and Bellinger is going to be really good, too. That team's stacked. And adding David Price to that pitching rotation, him not having to be an ace, or possibly even a number 2, is really impressive. He's probably going to be 3 or 4 in that lineup, which is awesome. And it's really cool for David Price and that Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, it was a cap hit. It was definitely for the Red Sox to move on with and try and get some prospects. Mookie Betts wants to be a free agent next year. He has stated that. So this is Boston trying to get as much as they can for not making it just a half-year rental, because if they would have traded him at the deadline this year, they would have got Jack. They wouldn't have got what they got this year or at this time. So getting a full year for Mookie Betts for the Dodgers, they get away some pretty decent prospects. Jeter Downs. It's not Derek Jeter, all right? It's not the guy that Boston hated for so long. But Jeter Downs is a pretty good prospect. And to me, I think Mookie Betts is going to be just another rental in Los Angeles. I don't know if they're going to get an extension for him. I'm sure they're going to try their best. But it definitely looks like that the Dodgers are all in yet again, and they want to find a way to win that World Series. Obviously, they're going to be a favorites in the NL West yet again. But to me, just off the bat, I think Mookie Betts is going to be just what Manny Machado was in 2017. and that's just a rental. However, this year with Mookie, it'll be a full year instead of half year.
I was about to say that what this trade actually reminds me a lot of is when the Cardinals picked up Jason Hayward, and with thoughts they were going to be able to extend Jason Hayward beyond just the 1 year he played there, and then found out that it was just a rental and gave up a few future prospects for it. And the thing about that is, Boston's really hoping it works out for them right now, because
Right.
Boston's been on a really bad slump lately, been overpaying a lot of people. I think it'd probably be best for them if they move on and keep moving on from the bigger contracts. I think they still need to try to shop JD Martinez, because they need to get lower and lower, because they need to rebuild right now. That's where they're at. They just need a complete rebuild right now.
Yep. No, I fully agree. And just another prediction right off the bat. I'm gonna give. I don't know if you even consider this a hot take, but I'm gonna throw it at you. I would not be shocked if the Boston Red Sox finish 4th in the AL East this season.
Yeah, I don't think they're the best team right now, and I think that's gonna be seen this year on the field for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to the XFL. The St. Louis Battlehawks on the road got their first win. We got to see a Bud Light shower, which is something that we haven't seen in St. Louis for quite some time for a football team. Hopefully we see it next week when they win again. The thing about it though is I'm really excited to see them win their first game. The other game that kind of stuck out to me was when the Guardians game. I wanted to see how Matt McGloin did.
Yeah.
Being an X-Raider, I wanted to see how he did, and they did pretty decent. They got their first win of the season. PJ Walker just kind of, I seen a tweet saying something about Dak wanting $30 million, and then Jerry Jones said, "Who's this PJ Walker kid?" It was just kind of funny. He threw for 272 yards and had 4 touchdowns in that game. Cardale Jones is somebody, when he was in college, I really thought he would be more of a pro prospect, and it looks like he's finally found a home with the DC Defenders. He looks interesting to see. I think you told me you're going to plan on going and seeing a few of those games this year of the DC Defenders. And then we've already had a firing in the XFL. Pepper Johnson of the Vipers, the defensive coordinator, has already been fired after 1 week. So
that's insane.
They're not playing around in this league.
Hey, that's the best thing about it, though. It's not being shown as a joke. Week 1, they've already made more money than the AAF did the entire season or half season or whatever you want to call it. XFL is no joke. Obviously, we're going to see what happens this week coming up, and if the ratings are just as good. Some people were saying bad things about looking at only having 18,000 people in the stands and them playing at MetLife, and it looked terrible because they only sold the lower bowl. I'm all for that. Hey, if you know that you're not going to be able to fill stands like NFL, and obviously we all know that the XFL isn't the NFL, only sell the good seats. Only sell it. Make it a more friendly environment for fans to be able to get and watch sports in February. If you take this as it is, and you take the XFL as it not being the NFL, but it being football in February and March and April before the draft, and an opportunity for these guys to make another shot at making the NFL, like a Cardale Jones, like a PJ Walker, like an Austin Pearl. How about that guy, that receiver for Seattle, with his 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns? He was amazing.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think it's great, and I love the rule changes. I think some of them are really fun. I know you were a little weird about the kickoff. I think it's exciting.
The kickoff. It's kind of just strange to me. I'm not a fan of it. The one other thing though is I think that a lot of these teams are really just in cities that need a team too. And the whole thing about only selling the lower half, I've looked on like StubHub, thinking about going to one of the St. Louis Battlehawk games. They only sell the lower half. That's a good thing. You're getting tickets like that for $50, where back when the Rams were in town, if you had $50 in your pocket, you're sitting in the nosebleeds. So I can say that's not a bad thing that they're only selling the lower half. That makes it gives it more of a college football feel, if I'm being completely honest. It makes it where everybody's closer. I like that. So I'm excited to see what the XFL does from here. I don't think it's going to end after a couple of games like the AAF did.
No, me neither.
I think everybody kind of knew that was not going to be a real thing. I think everybody knew it was going to fall apart. I mean, just they didn't have the right backing for it, and they didn't put it together properly. So I wasn't surprised by that one.
I will tell you one thing, that it is really weird to see a St. Louis team in an Eastern Conference or Eastern Division. Just looking right off the
Yes.
bat and seeing that, to me, it's weird. But obviously, when you look at the teams, it makes sense geographically. But this Eastern Division is way tougher than the West. You look at New York, you look at DC, St. Louis. Those are the three favorite teams, and the only team really doing anything in the Western side, I guess you could say Houston, but Houston wasn't that great. LA, although they lost, PJ Walker looked decent, but yeah, the West is not going to be fun. I think the East is going to win this one, whoever decides to make it there. And I wish St. Louis was in the West because I like DC and I like St. Louis. I'd love to see them in the championship round, but I don't think that's going to happen. So New York, St. Louis, DC, all those guys are really cool. And I know we're out of time, but one last thing I got to say, how cool is it for guys like Pat McAfee to go up and talk about how cool, like Marquette King, his amazing punt. I know you're big on King, and he plays for your Battlehawks. Had that amazing punt. It got messed up by the guy that threw it into the end zone. He thought it touched them. I understand where he was getting to. It still was an idiotic play by him, but hey, you live and you learn. That's why he's in the XFL. But how awesome was it that 10 seconds after he got off the field, McAfee was in his face with a microphone? Love it. I love it.
Yeah, McAfee's going to be the one thing that's going to keep the XFL going for sure. He's a lively character. Sports Center and ESPN completely messed up, not giving him a good enough contract and asking him to do the Monday night games. They completely messed up on that. He would have been amazing on Monday Night Football, and that was where he should have ended up. And I think they're going to notice that this season during the XFL that he's one of those guys. He could be a commentator easily.
Absolutely. What's the over-under for F-bombs this weekend at the XFL games?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, Jesus. It was crazy. And the mics were so open. They had like boom mics pushed at the players, I'm guessing, because of how easily they were heard.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Man, it sounded like they were wired up damn near.
Very cool.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and switch over to the NFL free agency. There's a lot of big names for sure. Obviously,
Absolutely.
You have Brady, you have Rivers, you have Drew Brees, but you also have Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Tannehill. As much as people make a joke about how bad Jameis Winston was last year, he still had the most touchdowns last year, and then Dak Prescott as well. That's a pretty good load of quarterbacks to if you're needing one. So this is why I still say Cincinnati should go after one of these quarterbacks and draft Chase Young. I know you're big on Joe Burrow, but I still think that's the move. But you also got guys that are going to chase the quarterback around that are out there, and they're pretty mean too. Robert Quinn coming off a great season with Dallas. He's a free agent. Derek Wolfe, another free agent. You also have people like Jadeveon Clowney, Shaquille Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh, all free agents. Michael Bennett is also a free agent I've seen. The Rams are losing a lot of people this offseason. Chris Harris is back there. He might pick you off. Anthony Costanzo, Jack Conklin, they're going to try to protect somebody out there. And if they get on the same team, that could be a lot of fun to see because those guys are both big monsters. And all that fun stuff. And there's only 3 real receivers out there to target. Mari Cooper, AJ Green, and Emmanuel Sanders. And, that's 3 good people, but there's 32 teams. So which ones are going to miss out on these 3 great targets?
Yeah, and you're right. And thankfully, there's a really deep wide receiver draft this year because it's a perfect year for it because the free agent market for wide receivers are not that big. But one of the edge rushers you didn't bring up that I think honestly a lot of teams can go and will go for and probably can get a pretty decent contract for. That's Vic Beasley. He had a couple of years that were not so hot in Atlanta. They decided to move on from him, but he had potential at one point in time. So I think that if he finds a way to resurrect his career and go somewhere and be a top edge rusher, he has that potential to do it. I would not be surprised to see him get a prove it kind of contract, maybe a 1-year deal, 2-year deal by a certain team. And then Josh Norman gets cut today. Josh Norman's moving on from the Washington Redskins.
He needs to move to safety because he's too slow from any kind of man coverage. He's a zone coverage kind of corner, so he's going to have to find the right scheme. Otherwise, he's going to get ate alive like he did in Washington. Wasn't a big fan of him in Washington.
Yeah, I think the Panthers won that trade for sure. And Josh Norman, I'll tell you what, though. he just screams Tampa Bay for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that they took Revis when he was older, or the fact that Bruce Arians is decent with veterans, because I think Phillip Rivers should go there too. I don't know if it's that fact that I think Bruce Arians and veterans just go well together, but to me, initially when I thought of that thing about Josh Norman and him, being cut today, Tampa Bay initially went in my mind. How about you?
I'm honestly the guy I'm interested in this entire offseason is going to be Robert Quinn. He looked unstoppable for about the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a guy who a couple years ago had 19 sacks in the season. So I'm really interested to see what he can do on another four-man. He's a four-man front kind of player. And there's a lot of teams out there that'll be in demand for him. He'll have high demand in this offseason, I'm pretty sure. That's somebody I really want to see about. Like I said, with Josh Norman, I don't really see. He's going to have to go to, like you said, maybe Tampa Bay, maybe San Francisco. Him and Sherman on the opposite sides playing zone coverage could be good because Sherman is a zone man guy where he kind of plays the zone, but he also plays the man. It's kind of going to just be an interesting offseason to see for sure. A lot of big moves are going to be made. A lot of big names are going to be changing cities. I still think Tom Brady's leaving New England. So
I do too. I know a lot of people don't think so, but I do too. And I like the fact that you think it's going to be Oakland. So here's the question. Not Oakland, Las Vegas now, the Raiders.
Yeah.
I know you're a Raiders fan. How exciting will you be if Brady goes there? You're going to be number one fan, right?
No, I'm going to have to find a new fan base. I'll probably just go across the bay, maybe just stay out there in California. I don't know. I don't know.
If Brady becomes a Raider, I'll send you a jersey. So you can put it right there behind you.
So I've literally watched our team trade away in the last 5 years, trade away our best player, release one of the best punters we've had in the past 20 years. You could say Shane Leckler. Shane Leckler was very good and very precise.
He was great.
We had nobody with a leg like Marquette. And I've watched them take him, throw him to the side, trade multiple players, and move the team. And I'm still a fan. The only thing that will make me not be a fan of this team is if they have Tom Brady on the team. That should express what I think of Tom Brady.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to definitely replay this clip in a couple weeks once Tom Brady signs to the max deal. We were making that joke on the messages the other day. It's like Mayock loves Brady so much that he'll probably give him $60 million just to be on the sidelines for him, or just to play
for
play
a
a
while.
season.
Mayock loves him. Mark Davis loves him. John Gruden loves him. This seems like that's going to be the spot. And I actually have a crazy sneaking suspicion. And I'm just going to throw this at you real quick. I know we've went over way on this free agency because NFL is exciting to talk about.
That's all right.
What if the Raiders call you in Cincinnati and say, hey, we know you got that number 1 overall pick. Would you take it's the 14 and the 19 this year, right?
I think that's what Oakland has. It's 14-18 or 14-19.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's like that.
Would you be interested in these 2 picks and Derek Carr for that number 1 by chance? We just got Tom Brady for 2 years. And then
That's interesting.
And then all of a sudden the Raiders have Chase Young 2 years after losing Khalil Mack.
Ooh.
It's just a thought.
It's a crazy thought. I wonder if they do it.
And so here's the only reason I think about this. The draft is in Vegas.
Yep.
It's going to be the first year the Raiders are in Vegas. They're going to want to make a splash. So that's why I said Tom Brady to begin with. I could honestly see them giving Brady a max deal and then still trying to sign like Amari Cooper or AJ Green to come in and be that guy for Brady to throw it to. And then
they definitely need receiver help if they bring a big quarterback in. There's no doubt about that.
Right. And then they have multiple first-round picks this year, and I believe multiple third-round picks this year. And Derek Carr, who is an asset to this team, whether somebody out there would trade in a heartbeat for Derek Carr. There's got to be at least 5 teams in the NFL I can think of that would trade for Derek Carr in a heartbeat to be their starting quarterback. So
I'm really intrigued if you're the only person in the world that thinks that, or if there's more. So let me throw this out there real quick for when we make a clip of this. And I want to know, we're going to put a poll on the bottom of this one, and I want to know, would you guys trade for Derek Carr? So put that on the poll. And then also let's put it on the poll. if you were the Las Vegas Raiders, would you trade with Cincinnati your 2 first-round picks and Derek Carr?
I think it's more the question, would the Cincinnati Bengals do it at this point?
All right, there it is. If you were the Bengals,
yeah, it took 2 top picks for. Remember when RG3 got traded? When they traded up to get RG3 just a while back. I mean, it's going to take a lot to get that number 1 overall pick.
I agree. I'm all aboard that Burrow train, so I don't know. To me personally, if I'm Cincinnati, you got to give me an arm and a leg. You got to give me 50-50 revenue sharing. You got to do a lot of things for me to get rid of Joe Burrow. I just think this guy's going to be legit, but I know you think otherwise. But
Let me just throw this whole scenario at you, okay?
All right.
Raiders trade up to 1. They get rid of DC and the 2 first-round picks, like I said. Maybe even a third, because we know that people are stingy this nowadays.
And who do they draft?
They draft Chase Young.
Yep.
Now Washington's on the clock at 2, and they keep asking for way too much from everybody to move up to get Burrow. By the time they go to draft, they actually take the I want to say his last name is Miller. I'm probably wrong on this. The offensive tackle. They take him,
Thomas.
Sorry about that. They take him number 2 overall to protect Dwayne Haskins, because they just drafted him last year. Now all of a sudden you have the Lions on the board at 3. Matt Stafford just got injured yet again last year. They trade Matt Stafford to the New England Patriots for a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft and draft Joe Burrow.
It's the what FL now. It's the what FL. That's what this is.
Imagine.
Hey, I'll tell you what. If that happens, then Detroit wins. Detroit wins it, because to me, I don't see. There's no way in hell that Joe Burrow goes below 2. Let alone, to me, I don't think he goes below 1, but let alone 2. Because Washington, I think, would do everything in their power to move down. And you know very well, to me, I know very well that Miami would trade their 5 and one of their other 3 first-round picks to move up 3 spots if they had to. So I think that if anything, if this trade happened, this nice what if L thing, or even if Burrow was not selected number 1 and Washington picked him, because I don't think Washington's going to take quarterback here at 2. I think they're happy with Haskins. Quick on that. It's not going to happen.
They took, what was that, 4 years ago now, 5 years ago? I'm probably off on that. When they took Robert Griffin.
2012.
Okay. So 9 years or 8 years ago
now? That long ago, man.
Wow. Time flies when you're old. Anyway, so when they took him in the 3rd round of that year, or no, the 4th round of that year, they took Kirk Cousins as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a team, this is an ownership that shows they're not exactly loyal to quarterbacks.
You're right, but I just don't see Haskins
could just freak out and take Joe Burrow, and then have Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins go into camp trying to fight it out.
I think it's a different story, though, when you draft a quarterback in the 1st round, you draft a quarterback in the 3rd round, let alone do a Josh Rosen case, where you draft somebody in the 1st round at round 10 in 1 year, and then year 2, you go ahead and get rid of him and then draft somebody else. That's exactly what this would be, with the exception of, instead of being the number 1 overall pick, it'd be the number 2 overall pick. Yeah. It would be the Josh Rosen case. I don't see that happening with Haskins. I think Haskins has more upside than Rosen does. I think Rivera is really happy with the potential that Haskins has, and Rivera worked with a guy that's like Haskins for years, and that's Cam Newton. So I think Haskins is going to be the guy in Washington next year, and I don't see them going after a quarterback. Now, if for any chance that he goes to number 2, Joe Burrow falls at number 1, which like I said, I don't see that's likely. Washington's going to trade out of that pick, and I guarantee you 100%, if nobody else is on that phone call, the Miami Dolphins.
The other thing I think could happen, and I've told you this multiple times, is Teddy Bridgewater signing with the Cincinnati Bengals and then taking the edge rusher overall because of Trevor Lawrence being available next year.
Yeah. No, if that was the case, then that'd be great. I think that you have to look, at the best point. Joe Burrow, to me, obviously is the best quarterback on the board. However, Chase Young is the number 1 athlete on the board by miles, in my opinion. He's the best player on the board. But Cincinnati needs a quarterback, and they can't pass that up. However, there is great free agent quarterbacks. We just talked about them here in our NFL free agency thing that the timer went off about 15 minutes ago. But, right. But I'll tell you, if they found a guy like Bridgewater, if he decides to move on from New Orleans, or if they get a guy like, God, there's so many. Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, some guy that could be a filler until they get Trevor
Ryan
Lawrence.
Tannehill had a great year last year. Looked like if he had a line in front of him, he can actually do a couple of things. Showed why Miami is even more of a mess than we thought all this time.
Yep.
And, any of these guys are plug-and-play quarterbacks that can get you at least 1 year. And, like I said, I could see this being the reason. Now, however, with all this being said, everything I just said, Bleacher Report just popped up today and said that the general manager of the Bengals said it's what the NFL wants when asked if the Joe Burrow would be drafted to Cincinnati.
I mean,
They
it's not wrong.
It's what the NFL wants.
It's not wrong.
Now, that kind of implies that they're probably going to do it, but...
And they don't have to be secretive with their pick.
I was about to say, what the NFL wants isn't always what the NFL is going to get either, so we could very well see them go the opposite way if they get a hold of Teddy Bridgewater's agent and work out a multi-year deal, or get a hold of Ryan Tannehill for a 1-year lease at a cheap contract, because this team's going to be at the top of the draft again next year. So
they're going to be top 5-ish, I would say. I'll tell you what, we could talk about this. We could talk about this topic over and over again. Honestly, we probably should fill 2 blocks in next week for it. Yeah. But this is continuous. This goes on and on. But there's so many quarterbacks in this free agent market. There's Joe Burrow. We don't need to know what's going to happen with him. Who knows if his combine blows? To me, I don't think that's going to change anything. He had a Heisman record, a beautiful season. My God. Hey, I don't know if you know or not. I'm going to do it again. I'm on that Heisman train, baby. I'm all on that Joe Burrow train. I think that guy is the real man.
Real quick, who's the last LSU quarterback that was taken number 1 overall?
Yeah, so here it is again. We constantly bring this up over and over again in the Twitter chats, but we're going to put it on the airways here now. the last LSU quarterback draft number 1 overall. We all know who it is, Jamarcus Russell. Yeah, but, when you put that together, Joe Burrow, Jamarcus Russell, are they the same player? No. But Jamarcus Russell had drive issues. He had a problem with his motor.
He did.
There is no feeling about that in Joe Burrow.
He didn't want to be in Oakland, and it was very obvious.
Yeah. Now, Joe Burrow is an Ohio boy. He's close to Cincinnati. I don't think any of those flaws are going to fall into Joe Burrow. I could be mistaken. Obviously, that's why we play this game. That's why we're so excited about sports. That's why we talk here on Tough Talk. That's why we have these perspectives. However, I just don't see it happen.
So let me throw this stat out there, since we're talking about things that have been said on Twitter. Yeah. And let me go ahead and repeat myself like a broken record real quick. For the past 30 years, 2 quarterbacks taken number 1 overall were Super Bowl champions. They both had the last name Manning. And one of them got traded from the team that drafted him number 1 overall. So only one of those quarterbacks has technically won a Super Bowl with the team that drafted them. So that's one quarterback in 30 years who's won a Super Bowl. And it was Peyton Manning, who's arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Arguably.
So easily. Are we convinced that Joe Burrow is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? Could he be the next Peyton Manning? Because that's what you're asking yourself when you go to take that guy number 1 overall. That's what you have to. That's how people need to consider quarterbacks at number 1 overall. Is this the next Peyton Manning? Because if not, I don't want it at number 1.
I don't think that you have to look at it if you're drafting a quarterback in the top 10. I think, honestly, not just number 1 overall, because at a top 10 pick, it's so valuable that, there's at least, I would love to look at this stat. And this is something, honestly, I think we should look into. For the last 20 years, we should look at all the top 10 picks. And we should see how many Pro Bowlers or Super Bowl winners or all pros out of that percentage are in that category. Pro
Bowlers will be up there.
Right. But and now if that was the case.
Winners, not so many.
Exactly. Now that's when it comes into for the quarterback play, because the quarterback play is so important, and it's obviously the position that drives your team, the number 1 position in all of sports.
That's why they sell tickets, and that's why they are the number 1 overall pick every year in and out.
Yep.
Is because of that. But how many of these number 1, top 10, top 15 quarterbacks have we seen that come out? They're overhyped. Somebody's buddies with one of the agents. I'm not gonna say who. He just always has his hair slicked back. And he's really good friends with one of the agents in the NFL. And I don't really take anything he says as a quarterback serious anymore, because he's such a good friend with an agent, and he's overhyped so many people. Do you remember how much he overhyped Jimmy Clausen? I wish I could find the link and just pull it up to show you. That was one of the biggest overhypes ever. ever.
Yeah, we had a few years like that around the 2008 2012 era with Jimmy Clausen, with Brady Quinn, basically the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks for 15 years.
Yeah, because this
Even
one guy
even
was
some
just
on
here to
Buffalo
sit
too. But
back.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, I agree with you.
that
But
guy.
if we go hindsight here, and then we need to move on, I got to push the button for you. But if we're going hindsight here, I'm gonna give you final thoughts on this real quick. I think Joe Burrow has that potential, and I think that as well too. When you have to think that, can he lead your team to a Super Bowl? Can he
Yeah,
completely change your franchise? Can he possibly make it a dynasty? Because that's really what you got to put it as.
yeah.
Is he that mentality? Basically, where Mahomes is right now. Obviously, Mahomes wasn't the number one overall
No,
pick. People passed
he
him up.
was. I
But
think
does
he
he
was
have that
15, wasn't he?
mentality? He's 15, 16, 17 around there. But
Yeah.
does he have that kind of play? Right? Um, is he a Peyton Manning? Is he that kind of style? Can he do that? He doesn't have to actually be that player, but can he push the team to that potential? And to me, I think they can. Now, obviously, if you go to Cincinnati, we've had this conversation before. They need offensive line work. Who knows what happens with receiver, especially if AJ Green goes. Their defense, there's a lot of holes. They'd have to build around him. You have to trust the process probably for a little bit and have some hope in him. But I think to me, Joe Burrow can win football games just for being Joe Burrow, no matter who's around him. I think that he can win games. They might not be enough games to get into the playoffs year one, but if they keep building around him, they can. That's why I would draft Joe Burrow number one.
Well, the big thing about it, and I'll say it one more time, is if you look at the top three even the top five quarterbacks that were in the MVP talk last year, none of them were a top five pick.
You're right, 100%.
Just
And I think
just
that's so
throwing
interesting.
that out there.
Yep.
So, all right, let's go ahead and finally move on.
That was great, though. Hey, that was a great talk, though.
Yeah, we had to get it out. NFL, like I said, it just gets that way.
Mhm.
NBA trade deadline. D'Angelo Russell got moved to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I got to say, that's pretty nice because at the beginning of the year, they said they wanted Karl Anthony Towns and 2 first-round picks, and they wouldn't take anything less for D'Lo.
Right.
And I thought, there is no way we're giving up Karl Anthony Towns and 2 first-round picks for D'Lo. I had made a prediction that we were going to get Draymond Green and D'Angelo Russell in return. What ended up happening is a much better deal for us. We got out of the Andrew Wiggins contract, and we got ourselves into a D'Angelo Russell, who's a young point guard, can grow with a young center. They're only 1 year apart in age. They could be up there in Minnesota for the next 10 years together if they wanted to be, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm really happy about that, actually, as a Timberwolves fan, because our team was kind of stale. Like, Okogie was doing okay, but man, D'Angelo Russell, that was a good one to find. Then, like we were talking about, Marcus Morris going to the Clippers is a good move for him because it puts him on a contender. He hasn't really had that opportunity quite a bit in his career. And then the Heat acquiring 2 really good veterans and 1 okay veteran in Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, and Solomon Hill. Jay Crowder and Iggy are going to give you 2 good wing defenders, 2 good 3-and-D players. That's a really good addition for that team. That it was already, we talked about it as a deep rotation, so it was pretty interesting to see. And then everybody took and they made their really good moves like that. And then the GM of the Detroit Pistons was drunk and doing cocaine off a stripper's buttocks when he decided he was going to trade Andre Drummond.
How do you think that's a good idea? Like, obviously Drummond needed to go because they needed to rebuild, but for that, like, that's all they could get?
Real quick, because I'm big into the money thing, right? How are you going to give Blake Griffin $32 million a year, but you're tripping out on Andre Drummond getting 25, I think it was? It's just kind of weird to me. Drummond's younger, has more room to grow. Blake is 30 years old now. I don't understand how, if you're trying to rebuild, the guy you get rid of is the young, prospering center who's been running your team for the past 4 years or whatever it is.
Now, what do you think about Cleveland now?
Cleveland, what are we going to do? Because, I mean, you got to move on from somebody. Do you, this offseason, do you trade Tristan Thompson? Do you trade Kevin Love? What about Larry Nance Jr.? They got a lot of pieces there that are just question marks now.
Yeah, and then you got these guards that are just these young guards that are playing there. But my question, I can't believe that they didn't trade one of those guys at the trade deadline either. Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love. I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought they were going to be more active. I thought they were going to be more sellers than buyers, but that obviously wasn't the case. But they're looking towards the future.
Shocked by Andre Drummond, they were just like, all
Yeah.
right, let's just shut it down. Right.
I mean,
now.
when you have a deal like that, you can't really pass it up. I can't believe Detroit did that. I feel bad for Pistons fans. If you're a Pistons fan and you actually have a good take on this and why they made this trade and why it's a good call, if you think this is actually a good thing, I'd love to hear from you. So comment below on this, because I honestly think it's an awful trade, and I feel like the majority feels the same way. And one more question for you, real quick, before we move on, is you're the Minnesota Timberwolves fan, and obviously you got D'Lo, great pickup for you guys. He looks great so far. You missed out on Wiggins though. Wiggins is now on the Golden State Warriors. Obviously that was a big trade back in the day to bring Kevin Love over to the Cleveland Cavaliers to start that LeBron saga all over again. Wiggins went to Minnesota. Now he's gone. So your thoughts about Wiggins? You happy with that move?
Okay,
obviously, what you get for Wiggins is a good thing, but he was, obviously somebody you're trying to build up for the last few years. Obviously, didn't work out for you.
This was actually one of Wiggins' best years. He was looking actually pretty good. But the thing about Andrew Wiggins is he plays the Olay defense far too often.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's out there thinking he's actually trying to get avoided, like he thinks they're Bulls, and he's actually trying to play Olay, because sometimes I think he just puts his arms up and goes, please go right by me. I appreciate that very much. With the regards of him coming out of college and the names that were compared, I'll say that what we got in return was a fair trade compared to what we thought we were getting out of Andrew Wiggins when we got Andrew Wiggins. We traded a guy who was getting 20 nights on the average, and all of a sudden, I got a theory for you, and I just want to ask you, what do you think if Kevin Love had never got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers?
It's interesting.
What
it's
if
really
Andrew
interesting.
Wiggins would have been a wing shooter for LeBron James? That's an interesting thought, ain't it?
It is interesting, but I just think of Kevin Love was a valuable asset for that championship run.
Well, he was.
So I don't know,
but
I think that there was a reason that they had J.R. Smith, they had some of those other role guys that kind of filled that role that Wiggins probably would have been there. And Wiggins obviously wasn't developed yet. We saw that in Minnesota at the beginning of his career. So I think they would have been worse. I think Cleveland would have been worse. So that draft, the reason
I asked that is because Kevin Love was such a good big man in Minnesota, because he ran the team and the team was ran through him, and then he looked like a completely different player when he played in Cleveland, and it was weird to watch. And
he didn't have to be the number one.
Well, he's still kind of that guy right now, and he honestly, arguably, could be the number one guy right now, but he's not playing like he did in Minnesota.
Right.
And so it was kind of weird to see how he fell off, honestly.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think age is becoming a factor now a little bit with it. But when he went to Cleveland initially, he didn't have to be the number one. I think it changed his game a little bit. Now, obviously, since LeBron's gone, he's held on that way. I think they're definitely more taking a youth movement. I think that's why Drummond came into the game. I think that they're going to try and move Love to the best of their ability this year at some point. I don't think that's going to be anywhere like a buyout. I don't think the buyout's going to happen. I think it's going to be in the offseason. They're still going to get something
have to
for
be an
him.
Offseason thing. I could honestly see Tristan Thompson getting bought out. His contract was very similar to what Marcus Morris had, right there in that $15 to $18 million range. So I could see him getting bought out. But
both of them sound like draft day trades to me. They sound like trades just wide open. Hey, let's make a move to take a draft, and we'll give you this guy plus the pick to move up or move down. So that's where I see that with Cleveland. But we thought the same thing at the beginning of the NBA draft too. We thought Kevin Love might go then. We thought Tristan Thompson might be in the move, and they're still there. So who knows what Cleveland's thinking? Obviously, we have more thoughts than they do, apparently, because they're bringing in. They think they're a better team than they are because they're buying and bringing in Andre Drummond.
Right. All right. So let's move on to UFC 247. Lots of controversy. I'm gonna go ahead and start off by saying that John Jones winning. When we talked about it in the live chat, I said I have Jones winning 2. And then I said, I got Jones winning 4 and 5 as well. A lot of people are saying that Reyes won the first 3. I don't see it that way. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that the championship rounds went to Jones. And I think that was pretty obvious to me. I think 1 and 3 went to Reyes. and I think 2 is a wild card. That's what I think. That's where I think it was. I personally gave it to Jones, but there was a time I know we texted right off the bat and we said, "Is there a possibility that Reyes really won round 1 and 2?" And
Yeah.
you and
in the
me,
group chat, yeah, we were talking about it in the blue collar group chat. We were all discussing it, and I
yeah,
said I think, and the reasons I argued, and I remember exactly what it was.
mm-hmm.
Jones had center of the cage. He didn't have a takedown in that round, but his striking was really good, and it seemed like Reyes was backing up a lot in that round. And he kept center of the cage, and he got him up against the cage, I do believe, once or twice. And I said that was the reasons I had Reyes losing that round, was because he was backing up a lot, and Jones kept center of the cage. And I don't understand how center of the cage and octagon control makes sense, because think about Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell did his best work when he was backpedaling, and then all of a sudden the left hand came out. Reyes is the same kind of fighter. He's a counter striker. So backing up, avoiding shots, and then landing your shots should be considered more in the judges' scorecards. But right now, with that being a thing, that's why I said he had the second round. Real quick, because we only got a minute left on this one. Shevchenko looked like a monster. I don't think anybody's going to be able to stop her. She's going to have to move up a weight class, and she's still not probably going to get stopped.
Yeah.
Tafa showed that he had some pretty hard hands in that fight and knocked out somebody who a lot of people thought he was going to lose to, the hometown kid, and
Adams.
Juan Adams. And that
was a quick fight. It was like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. They were hyping up Adams so much, I really thought that was going to be something. And then the other one that was a big thing was Derrick Lewis won by decision. But Latifi said after the fight that the judges the judges gave the fight to Lewis, and it was not the only time on the card that we've seen the judges do something, because
not at all.
Judge Joe Salas, he actually scored the fight between Jones and Reyes 49-46. 49-46. It was so bad during this event that Dominic Cruz at one point said the judges were literally not watching the Andrea Lee Lauren Murphy fight. He said there was no way they could have been watching that fight.
Yeah, for 30 seconds. For 30 whole seconds, they were bringing that up. It's insane. There's no way that should have happened. Yeah, there's definitely some issues going on with judging, and I'm glad that the commentators, Joe Rogan and company, those guys, I'm glad that they called them out. That needs to happen. When you look at this Jones fight, when it comes to that, there's no way that there should have been a call that was 49-46.
No
way. To me, I made a tweet. I made a tweet after the match, and I felt like, because round 2 was a wild card, and I said I had Jones. That's what I had. But to me, if you didn't have 48-47 Jones or 48-47 Reyes, you weren't doing it right. You weren't watching that match.
Decision.
So did I. I did too. I couldn't believe. I was surprised it was unanimous. I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a split decision. I thought it was all going to be 48-47s. And the fact that was a 49-46 was absolutely outrageous.
Yeah. Now, if it was unanimous 48-47 the whole time, I wouldn't be as upset. Although I did still think it was going to be a split decision. But at least if there was 48-47 across the board, it's like, man, okay, I get that, because there's probably going to be that wild card round that you and I both think was round 2. Now, some of the judges didn't think that was round 2.
A lot of people thought it. I heard Joe Rogan saying he thought the question mark round was round 3. I thought it was round 2.
So do I.
So I almost want to go back and watch the entire fight. Hopefully it pops up on YouTube soon enough, because I want to watch it again, and I want to watch it and see what they saw in the second round that I didn't see, and what they saw in the third round that I didn't see. Because literally in our group chat we all agreed. Every round we all agreed. Every round. Yeah. And so what you could say at that point is that's 3 people judging a fight, which were there 3 people cage side. We would have all scored it 49-48 Jones. Yeah. So there's 3 more people. So there's 6 people that thought Jones won that fight, at least in the world. So but I'm going to go ahead and let you get on to, you got a frozen screen real quick. So I'm going to break come on. Yeah, go figure. It keeps doing it. And then I had my origin pop up 3 times. I thought that was real fun.
I gotta love that. Right. But I'll tell you what, when you look at UFC, we got some more fights coming up this weekend. There are going to be some good fights too. A couple weeks from now, UFC Fight Night is in Norfolk, which is pretty close to me too, which I'm excited for. I'm gonna maybe hope to try and get to that. But man, the tickets are so expensive.
Yeah.
But there's some really good matches coming up soon. I can
The
only
UFC 248 is going to be
248 is gonna be really good. There's
guys.
no doubt.
This is going to be the hardest fought Israel Adesanya has ever had in his entire career in Yoel Romero. He didn't have to take this fight. Joe Rogan said he didn't have to take the fight. Dana White said, dude, I offered you other fights. You really don't have to fight him. Yoel Romero is a physical specimen, and he's just a beast. He's just like a pit bull who just attacks. And it's going to be really, really fun to see those two fight because, man, I can't wait for that fight. So the last time I've got this hype for a fight, I watched two guys just circle for 5 rounds. So I'm really hoping that don't fucking happen.
Well, let's hope that's not the case.
Yeah, because that happened last time I got this hype for a fight. So let's just hope it's not that again. But I'm going to let you go and get into OTI. And
let's end it with On the Ice.
Yeah, let's
do it.
I'll see you guys next week. So here you go with Christian.
All right, how you guys doing? And it's On the Ice for the end of our Tough Talk for February 14th. 2020. Real quick, I hope you guys enjoy your Valentine's Day, and I hope that you guys, whatever you guys are doing tonight, it's a great time. But let's start off with what we have going on in the NHL this week, and actually, you had some news that happened just a few hours ago, and that's Bruce Boudreau from the Minnesota Wild. He's fired on Friday and replaced by his assistant Dean Evston. They're not too far out of the wild card race here. They're only a couple of games back from the Arizona Coyotes, only 3 points to be exact. And they fire him. Last 10, actually not too bad for him. They're 7-3-1 actually in their last 11 games. So it's definitely a weird call, but the GM thought it was the right call to make. Definitely a lot of questions going up in the air there. Minnesota is definitely a hockey town, so they want winning and winning only. They think they have a better roster than their record shows. So we'll see what happens moving forward with Minnesota. They just, some big moves happening in Minnesota this past week with the firing, and then they obviously just had a big trade too as well. Jason Zucker, a big guy for Minnesota, moving on to Pittsburgh for Alex Galchenyuk, which is actually a really big blockbuster trade to start off the NHL week. So a pretty big one there. We'll see what happens moving forward with Minnesota, but only a couple points out of the wild card. Now without a head coach, their assistant takes over. Pretty impressive as we continue on here. And we're going to continue with the Western Conference, and that's something that was actually pretty scary a few days ago. And that was St. Louis with Boymester. Jay Boymester, he actually collapsed on the ice. Well, not on the ice, but on the bench. And he had some issues going on. They had to postpone the game. It was just not a good look that was going on with St. Louis there. And for Boymester, 7:50 remaining in the first period, and he just had a cardiac episode. Now he is okay. He is in critical he was in critical condition, but he had an ICD and an implantable defibrillator actually installed to help his heart get normal rhythm. And they're saying that his status is going to be updated within the next week. It'd be interesting to see when he comes back on the ice, if at all. But definitely lots of T's and P's for Jay Boymester there. Hopefully everything is okay moving forward. And the Buffalo Sabres, my dreadful Buffalo Sabres, I should say. Zach Bogosian has been placed on waivers by the Sabres. A lot of fans happy about this. Bogosian requested a trade earlier in the season, and man, the Sabres just aren't looking good. They had a great first half of the season yet again, and they're falling once again to the bottom of the NHL standings. So Bogosian will be on waivers. He just was placed on waivers today, so hopefully someone picks him up and takes that roster cap away from the Sabres. As we continue on and look into our standings, it still sits about the same way. It's the Washington Capitals with 79 points. They actually are in third place now in the East. Boston has taken over for them. Boston number 1 in the Eastern Conference. Tampa Bay at number 2 with 81. And then looking at that Western Conference, it's still the St. Louis Blues with 74 points. Colorado is close to them at 72. And leading that Pacific Division, a very tight Pacific Division, is Vancouver Canucks with 69 points, followed by the Edmonton Oilers at 66. NHL is only ramping up. Their All-Star break was pretty fun. It was pretty eventful. But seeing things like coaches being fired right off the bat, right after, with only a couple games out of the wild card, it's just been a very interesting season so far, and it's only going to continue, especially as the trade deadline gets closer and closer. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Tough Talk. And we will see you back here next Friday, as we always do. Be sure to check us out at Tough Talk Pod on Twitter. And then check out the rest of our Blue Collar Radio Network as well. We have 8 to 10 other podcasts that we are proudly a part of now in this network. You can find us on Twitter there at Blue Collar MG. Thanks, guys. We'll see you back here next Friday.
Thanks for listening to the Tough Talk Podcast. Be sure to tune in every Friday as we break down all the major sports topics for the week. Don't forget to subscribe and follow on Twitter at Tough Talk Pod.